Hello, good afternoon and welcome to New Forest Morphs. Today Mandy's joining me to be my camera lady, and thank you Mandy for coming into the facility. And we're both preparing for Christmas and it's very exciting. Are you looking forward to Christmas, Mand?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got some nice things planned, family gathering. So first of all, let me just thank everyone for the wonderful feedback I had from yesterday's video and for all the wonderful points that have been made. And what we're going to do today is we're going to just have a look at 2 or 3 different areas of our snake behaviour. So today I did all the cleaning because Jared is studying hard for his exams. But we haven't fed our animals for nearly 2 weeks now. So there was only, let's have a look, there was only 5 rubs that needed cleaning and there was only 1 shed. Now I think yesterday we were doing an experiment, Mandy. We're trying to get the humidity up. Can you see that the humidifier over here, if you'd like to point the camera towards it, can you see all the water coming off there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then when I came in this morning it was completely dried out. So I thought, there goes my experiment for the first day. The humidity had dropped down to 49% and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to get 2 of these humidifiers. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in quite late in the evenings and just top it up, and then hopefully we can try to get up to 70% humidity. That said, when I was cleaning out the rubs, I'll just show you the one boy who shed out, and I'll just show you the impact. This is one boy that we never sprayed down, and the experiment I was doing from yesterday, Mandy, was to get rid of my sprayer, which Rob was explaining to me is a tool that I've been using because our humidity hasn't been, the ambient humidity hasn't been good enough over the last couple of years for them to shed out naturally. So I've been supplementing by spraying into their rubs. So what I thought I'd do this week is try to get the humidity levels up, and instead of me going around spraying everything, let the humidity in the air create the perfect environment for the snakes to thrive. So let's have a look at Bowser. He was the one that shed out, and I'll bring him onto the table, Mandy, so you can sit comfortably. And here he is. Isn't he looking lovely? You see it? He's as happy as Punch, he's as clean as a whistle, and I haven't sprayed him down. And you'll see that he's done an almost perfect shed. Can you see his shed? Okay, so that kind of confirms that I've been spraying down my animals unnecessarily. Which kind of makes sense, because when I do pick up their sheds, they're actually very wet, which means they've been perfect, but they've been probably over the top. Whereas that one was actually quite dry, and he shed out by himself perfect with no stuck shed. So that teaches me that maybe my precautionary measures over the last couple of years to try and get the humidity up, I've now got to acknowledge and accept that our humidity in the facility is a lot better than it was a year ago, and therefore I don't need to do as much spraying. Of course, proof's in the pudding, because this is the first snake and we're doing this for a week, and I've got to make sure my humidifier stays up. But you'll see we've got other snakes that are in shed at the moment. So I've got Hercules, our other boy, he's in shed, and we've got anything with the green tags in shed. So the proof will be in the pudding as to whether or not this new method is going to work for us. Hopefully it will. So let's have a look at some other behaviour before we go into the discussion and topics that we're going to discuss about sociality, and we're going to talk about busting some of the myths out there on breeding and keeping ball pythons. So let's have a look and see. I found there was 2 extra girls that seemed to show extra contrast in their colours since we've changed the way in which we do things, and I'm just going to show you Tess. And have a look at this girl, Mandy. If I bring her up to the table. Okay. Now this is a vanilla spot nose. Now look at the intensity of her colour. Now I can look at that and say that looks more vibrant. This most vibrant I've seen her for quite a while. The vanilla is really contrasting well with the black. Now just by not feeding her for 2 weeks, Mandy, her colours are glowing, and she's in a much more de-stressed state because she's not having to work hard to digest, and she's in a much happier place, and therefore her colours are really starting to shine. So there's another benefit of actually not overfeeding your snakes, and actually taking a slightly longer cycle on feeding our snakes. And all the poos that came out that I cleaned were very small and non-smelly, Mandy, which is making life keeping snakes so much easier. Obviously we're going to start feeding next week, but that then leads me on to another girl that I thought was looking really good. And it's interesting, vanilla and fire come from a very similar style of gene pool. And you'll notice that if I show you her, look how vibrant her colours are. She's a fire girl. I've never seen my fire girl as bright as that. And I think the brightness of the coloration is a good indicator that she's in a happy space. Yeah. So if your snakes start to glow, that's normally one of two things. They're either very happy, or you get big females that can glow before they go. They call it glow before they go. It's a bit like you, Mandy. You always glowed in pregnancy before you gave birth. I always found you looked at your most beautiful when you were pregnant. And I think it's something that's built within us and within the humans as well as animals. Is animals tend to glow at that stage. So it's very, very fascinating. So I do think that on an observation level, there's a lot of benefits from. I've been calling it intermittent fasting. I mean, if it was us, we would be intermittent fasting, but because it's 2 weeks, 2 weeks is not fasting. Rob says to me that I call it fasting, but it's not fasting. He feeds his snakes every 10 days to 2 weeks, with the exception, obviously, certain times of the year where he'll breed more regularly when the breeding season kicks in. So I guess really we're not really fasting these snakes. All we're doing is we're helping their metabolism drop. We're taking less stress off them by not putting meals in them, and we're moving away from a weekly diet to every 2 weeks for the sub-adults and the adults, with the exception of the hatchlings, which will get food once a week, and the girls that need to build follicles will get extra food because they need to build for their eggs. So that was another observation. The other observation today, you'll notice that there's yellow tags amongst the male rack. I've got a male rack here, and we talked about behaviour of snakes wanting to come out. Now the snakes that wanted to come out this morning when I was cleaning was Apollo, who's our Orange Dream Super Pastel Banana Boy, who is a real stud. Come and have a look at him now. Again, he's glowing. He's not displaying the same activity he had this morning. This morning he wanted to come out together with about 3 or 4 other boys. Now it's interesting that these boys would normally go into a breeding rotation every couple of weeks, and we've not bred our snakes for a couple of weeks because of the storm that we had on the weekend and because of all the problems we had with the ambient temperatures, and we felt that our animals were put under so much stress. We managed to recover everything, and everything's doing fine. But what we wanted to do, Jad and I wanted to make sure we didn't put our animals under any other stress. Now going breeding does stress out our animals. They could spend 2 days together, and they tolerate each other when they come together. And I think 2 days of being together, they may not necessarily display it, but they do go through a level of stress, and that can affect behaviour. So what Jad and I thought we'd do is we get the new backup facility in place and tested, which we've now got the massive new 9,000 watt generator. We haven't had a chance to set it up and test it yet, so we're holding back on pairing until we know we've got fantastic backup facilities in case we get another storm. So what I don't want is I don't want our animals being fed and then we get a drop in temperature, the backup system doesn't kick in, and if they've been breeding as well, that's all layering on the stress levels. They'll bounce back with low stress, and so the lower the stress they are, the better. And I think we're going to get blessed eventually. The other thing is Skip. Now here's Skip, who's one of our male boys. Now he is Jared's favourite boy. Have a look at him, Mandy. He is a gravel 100% het for clown. He wanted to come out and breed this morning, and was doing exactly the same as Apollo. And the third male that was showing a desire to breed is Kylo. So there's Kylo, Emily's favourite little pied, first pied that she ever had. His colours have become vibrant since we've increased the humidity, since we've helped him to just enjoy his environment, and I think he's just happier with a bigger water bowl. He's in a much happier space and he's looking great. So there's 3 examples of 3 of the boys that we wanted to breed. Okay, so let's move on now to bowl wrapping. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4 girls that were bowl wrapping, building follicles. If you come with me, Mandy, I'll show you the ones that were bowl wrapping, see if they still are. Daisy, Daisy, come and have a look at this, Mandy. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer, do. There she is, bowl wrapping for me and for you. It won't be a stylish carriage, and it will eventually lead to a marriage. She looks sweet, without any feet, in a rub with a bowl of water to enjoy. And she's classic bowl wrapping there. Sorry about that poor rendition. Mandy's a musician and she'll know how bad that was. She's smiling at the moment. But isn't she lovely? Again, she's showing vibrant colours. She's bowl wrapping because she's building follicles, and we're very hopeful. And the other one that was building follicles is Ray. Now Ray is one of my favourite pied, yellow belly pied girls, and again she's not bowl wrapping fully, but she's on the cool spot. So she's decided, both these girls are deciding to cool off. Their temperature's 87, 88 on the hot spot, 81 to 82 on the cold spot, and they're choosing to build their follicles. So there's a couple of girls showing behaviour, and again she's glowing and looking great, and they haven't eaten for 2 weeks. Down here we've got 2 other very interesting animals I was going to share with you. This is Korma, who's our banana pastel, who was bowl wrapping. There she is. So bowl wrapping activity again. We'll leave her in peace. And then we've got this one, which is Terry. She's our Orange Dream Yellow Belly 100% het pied girl. Now she was bowl wrapping this morning, but she's decided to go onto a heat spot now. Let's have a look at her. There you go, man. And she's looking absolutely stunning. They're all very, very content, very at peace. And I think this is a great blessing for us, because we know they're de-stressed. And we'll put that one back. And then the other one that was bowl wrapping, Mandy, have a look at this one. This is Jared's girl, Phoenix. Now I will use my hook. Jared was feeding on feeding night once. He opened a drawer and got tagged by this girl. So we learned to do this now. And there you go, classic bowl wrapping. And she's a big girl, she's 2.5 kilograms. And there's your classic bowl wrapping. She's 100% het for pied. She proved out and gave us a clutch. And she's given us some beautiful pied and cinnamon pieds. And that is classic bowl wrapping. You see her tails in the water as well. So what they tend to do is they use the tail in the water. That helps cool. And she's definitely cooling. So it's all good signs. We're not pairing, we're not feeding, but the animals are de-stressed and they're doing what they feel they need to do, which is build follicles. So it's a really interesting experiment, all this. Really interesting. And then there's one other animal I was going to show you here. Now this boy here, I think wants to breed, and I haven't really shown much of him. His name, I can never pronounce his name because Jared always laughs at me, as Zeus. Zeus? Greek. Zeus, the Greek god. Zeus. So here's Zeus. I'm going to show you what he's like. He'll come out, I'm sure. Hello. Now he had a completely dry rub. Beautiful paper that was nice and flat. Brand new water. And look what he's done.
Messy boy.
Now, do you think it's been a messy boy? Accidental? Or do you think that's purpose, Mandy?
No idea.
So Mandy's not sure. Jared's not 100%. I am. So he's a blackhead lavender, by the way. Did you get to see him, Mandy? Can you see how beautiful he is? Blackhead lavender. There we go. Now I didn't put that on him to show you this. This is all new to me since this morning. I wanted to show you that he wants to breed because he was just like the other boys, wanted to come out and breed. So I've got boys that want to breed. I've got girls that are bowl wrapping. They've not had anything to eat for 2 weeks, and we haven't paired them up. But what we're doing is letting them de-stress, and I think next week we should have hopefully some good success. So let's just talk about that behaviour. Is that accidental or not? Now Rob's come back, and thank you, Rob, for coming back. Yesterday I asked Rob to convince me of, we've got this, Rob and I agree on most things, but there's one area which we are not quite agreed on yet. I'm still wanting to be convinced. Rob sent me a two pages on his response to my YouTube channel video yesterday, and it was really helpful, and I'm still working through it. And I've said to Rob I'm going to do a lot of study and try to understand the science behind everything. But essentially Rob was mentioning that he feels that when you get a bowl situation like that, that's more likely to be accidental rather than planned. Whereas I think otherwise. I think that a lot of these snakes are intelligent enough to increase their humidity if they want to. And the reason I say that is because I'm getting less problems like that since I brought up the humidity. When the humidity was down to 40%, I found that a lot of my girls and boys were tipping their water bowls over, and they were creating extra humidity in their rubs. And the same problem occurred because I thought it was to do with the size of the bowls. And so what I did is I upgraded the size of the bowls, Mandy, to this size. If you have a look at this one. Bigger, heavier bowls so that big, strong animals can't knock them about and spill them. And I was even not overfilling them, I just filled them up to halfway. And what was happening is, before we adjusted our humidity, when we had lower humidity, the girls were taking those big bowls and they were putting their paper on top to absorb the water out. They were moving them around and splashing all over their rubs to create extra humidity. But since we've got the humidity now right, or at least moving into the right direction, that isn't happening hardly ever. So that's interesting. Now, does that mean that they were causing it themselves prior to the low humidity, or am I just misreading it? But all I'm saying to you is my evidence on the ground here is that I'm seeing less problems with the bowls when the humidity's up, but more problems with the bowls when the humidity's down, if that makes sense. Now, Rob lives in the tropics, Mandy, and therefore the humidity levels are going to be very high. Now, I'll be interested to know from Rob whether he still experiences his snakes tipping their bowls over in high humidity. Now, if he turns around and says to me, Paul, even though I've got high humidity, I'm experiencing bowls being knocked left, right and centre, then I would probably be more likely to agree with Rob's analysis that it's coincidental or accidental, because why would they be doing that in high humidity? So it'd be interesting, Rob, if you can come back to me on that one. So just exchange of ideas, views and what we're experiencing on the ground. That might help me realise whether this is accidental or whether this is purposeful. So that's one thing. And the other thing that Rob was saying is, please do go and have a look at his article. It's very, very helpful. So he's talking about, let me just see, he said, need more convincing? When your snake hatches from the egg, it receives no parental care, it receives no nurturing, it does not imprint on its mother so it can stick with her through infancy, it does not stay with the parent for months or years, learning the survival ropes. Our snakes are born with a hardwired set of behaviours that make them perfectly adapted to survive from day one with no assistance at all. So I would say I agree with that about 90%, and I think that 10% I disagree with, in the sense that why do we assist feed our hatchlings? Now, they've got the built-in instinct to feed and eventually they will, but we choose to assist feed them because every time we present food to them, they ask, are they smelling the food? Are their instincts kicking in? Are they happy with the egg that they've taken from the yolk from the egg that they're taking in? So we've had to assist feed some of our snakes for up to 8 to 10 weeks. Therefore, there's a bond building with us and the snakes. So though I appreciate 90% of what Rob is saying is correct, there is always an exception to the rule. And I think that's really the debate we're having, is I don't want to apply a blanket rule over everything. I think that every animal's different, and we need to be open-minded and flexible to move in and out of helping our snakes according to their needs. The other thing I'd like to say, and again, Rob taught me this principle, he taught me that the mothers spend 2 months incubating those eggs and virtually give up so much to bring them into this world, that there must be some kind of a bond between that mother and their embryos. And those that have actually chosen to do what they call a maternal incubation, rather than, you know, we have our incubators and we lift the female off and we put the eggs in incubation, and we do that for two reasons. Number one, we get the chance for the girls to rest so that they can get back into condition, because a mother will actually give up another 2 months of non-eating to hatch those eggs. She'll end up having 4 months of raising those embryos to the size that they're able to come out of the eggs. So I do believe there is a bond between the mother and the hatchlings, and it's very, very interesting to have a look at the studies on these things. Now, I've actually found on the internet some scientific analysis and some history, and I think just looking at some other things that Rob was saying, he's saying they do not require us to step in and be a surrogate mother to teach them what to eat and what to run away from. They don't learn this stuff. It's pre-programmed, built into the factory, which I agree with. They are solitary and secretive animals with no complex social structure or hierarchy. They tolerate no competition from rivals, and they are fiercely territorial. This is why mating in snakes looks like it does. On the rare occasions snakes meet, they must temporarily establish a dominant-subdominant social structure between the pairs that lasts only for the duration of their mating. They do not live in established social colonies with a permanent hierarchy where the dominant male gets to mate with all the females. Okay, so I thought that was interesting, and again, I don't disagree with that, but it's interesting to see. There's a couple of things I've noticed. Now, I know it's a different species, but if you look at an adder, have you ever heard of adders dancing, Mandy? Mm. So I was looking at the behaviour of an adder. Now, 2 male adders will dance, and the idea here is just before they breed with the female, they have a type of combat, and they're not aggressive, they don't kill each other, and they don't even bite each other, but they dance. And there's a video I've looked at online which shows these adders interacting, and they learn not to be aggressive, but they learn to dominate one another in a different way. And the male adder that wins is the one that gets the highest in the dance, towers over the smaller male, and then he concedes without getting beaten up, and then the male adder goes into the den, produce the babies with the lady. Now, to me, I see that as high complex social structure. I don't see that as, I mean, we don't get that in ball pythons, but I'm just trying to kind of open up our minds to a different way of thinking here, that there is something else going on with the species, that it isn't, that I think there are much more complex structures and much more complex social structures than perhaps we realise. And an example of this would be, for many, many years, Mandy, when they were writing all the scientific books on dinosaurs, and when they were writing about, I think the general consensus, I think 20 years ago, prior to the unearthing of so many different sites where the dinosaurs have occupied this earth, the general consensus was that dinosaurs were very much solitary predatory animals, particularly predatory animals, and that some of the dinosaurs weren't necessarily living in families. But they've uncovered through archaeology fossil remains and bone structures and nests and eggs of dinosaurs, including predatory dinosaurs as much as the T-Rex, of social herds that existed 193 million years ago. Now, what I'm trying to say is, I think science is imperfect. We're trying our best to understand the science, but I think as we develop as individuals, as a community, and with the technology that we're getting, for example, let's take space exploration. We now know there are billions and billions of galaxies and stars beyond our comprehension, worlds without end. Now, the scriptures have been teaching that doctrine for millennia, and scientists go into space with telescopes and see into these things, and suddenly science changes its viewpoint and changes its understanding of what we have. And I believe it will be the same with nature and with ball pythons. There's very few studies done on ball pythons, and this is one of the points I'm trying to make here. And this is why I do believe there's an awful lot more research and a lot more science that we really need to know. And I think we make a lot of general assumptions in the hobby and in the keeping, where we make these assumptions and we then apply them across the board. My own opinion is I think that we've got an awful lot to learn on keeping and breeding ball pythons. There's an awful lot to learn about their natures, their behaviours. And so I dug even deeper, and I was looking and I was saying, did you know, Mandy, that snakes, obviously they're in the reptile family, but my initial studies, and I'm no expert, but I'm just trying to study the science behind our hobby, is they evolved from, I think, four-legged reptiles. So snakes came from a four-legged reptile, is this is the research I've got so far on the web. Now that's interesting to me, because if you've got dinosaurs, which are 193 million years ago, living in herds and socializing, and we know that the evolutionary process is such that snakes evolved from these four-legged reptiles, which have more social structures, it does beg the question, are our snakes more socially sensitive and more socially aware than we think? And are we perhaps not fully understanding, because of the lack of science and lack of testing, what is actually going on in their heads and how it works? So I'm really fascinated by this subject. So I went and dug deeper to try and find some other articles that can help us understand some of the studies that have been out there. And I came up with this particular study, and it's called Dispelling Python Myths by Francis Koskiro. And if I show you that, Mandy, you can zoom in on the article. Okay. And it's very interesting, because what they do in this study is they actually base their summaries and their evidence based on tests that have been done on the ground and studying ball pythons. And there's very few out there, but I found it really interesting, and they seem to say that our ball pythons are a lot more complex than we make out. That they don't spend all their time in burrows, they don't spend all their time their diet. For example, I'll give you an example. So they went out and they caught, I think, 80 ball pythons in the daytime, and they took the study of all their fetuses to see what they've been eating. And did you know that amongst the males, and I think I've got a table I can show you. Have a look at this table, man. So there's a table of their results. It is a small sample, which is limiting, but it's the only data we've got, or some of the data we've got. You'll see that the males and the females are there. These are the birds that they've identified in their fetuses, and these are the mammals. And you'll see amongst the boys there's a high number of birds that are being consumed as opposed to mammals. And what that teaches us is, it teaches us that the ball python, particularly the males, spend time up in trees ambushing birds and squirrels, and I found it really fascinating. So although we kind of teach this principle that our ball pythons live in burrows and they ambush rodents, this study indicates otherwise, and I find this very interesting data. And I think we've got to go deeper and deeper. And I'm new to this, I'm no scientist, but all I'm saying is that this is my first opportunity to look at some of the science, and it's not consistent with what I've been taught and told as a newcomer to this industry. So we've just about run out of time today. I normally would do a shout out. You can see I'm wearing Richard at Predator BP's t-shirt here, so a big bit of love to Rich. Go check out his channel, Predator BP. And how much time we've got, Matt? Just the 1 minute. So I've just got 1 minute to see if I can find his channel for you. Let's see if I've got that here. Okay, Rich, just bear with me. Predator BP. I think many people will already be subscribed to Rich, but I just wanted to see if I can find his channel here. I've got so many channels that I'm following at the moment. It's not easy to find them. So what I'll do is I will give Rich a proper shout out another time, I think, because he's not. Let's have a look. No, it's not easy to find him. So what we'll do, Richard, we'll give you a proper shout out on the next video. Mandy, thank you very much for joining us. It's a lot of food for thought. Let's tomorrow continue the discussion on these myths, and look forward to getting your feedback. Goodbye for now.